And when I ask you a question, if you can, start it off with the question. So if I say where do tax dollars go, say tax dollars go to, but you don't have to. Where do supposed tax dollars go?
Tax dollars that are collected by the Internal Revenue Service go directly to the Federal Reserve, and from there to the International Monetary Fund. There's about a 20% credit given to the Treasury for the federal debts. Obviously, they'll never be paid off. The object of the collection of taxes is not for budgets or to operate our government. If they have money, all they need. All they do is print it. There's nothing behind it anyway, except our good faith and credit as American people. So the object of the taxes that they collect is for world control by the International Monetary Fund, so they can get other countries to sign up for their loans at egregious conditions that, in fact, bankrupt and destitute those countries. So they're in total control of the money makers, the powerful elite, the 12 banking families that own the Federal Reserve.
How did you discover who those 12 banking families were?
A lot of research. Most of it's historical research. Checking the charters of those banks. Most of them were royal charters in Europe. And the bankers are just a small part of the entire plan. I think this whole plan is the culmination of the end times. Not to be a Bible thumper, but I happen to believe that we're in the end times very, very soon, and this is just part of the entire plan that the Antichrist has for world control and domination. Once they control all the money in the world and all the countries in the world, they control us.
Where are those chimes coming from?
You hear the chimes, huh?
I forgot to actually start off. I wanted to get your credentials. You want to state them briefly?
I guess it's just a biography of myself, huh? I was a industrial engineer, and I worked for some major corporations in the United States, as well as in South America. I went to law school, got my degree, and decided to practice law, because I found out in law school that many of the things that I was being taught were in fact not true. For instance, the 16th and 17th Amendments were never ratified by the Congress. And that being the case, that means that they're frauds. They don't exist. A fraudulent law has absolutely no power and effect over anyone. And since they were not ratified by the prescribed method, they are in fact not laws. As Bill Benson wrote a book, The Law That Never Was. And it's right on point, because they do not exist, and they have no power over us. The only power they have is what we believe that they have. I decided, rather than practice law, which I did for several years, I would rather teach the law, because the individuals out there are really not being serviced well by attorneys. Number one, the attorneys do not know the material. They're too lazy to research it. The last research they did was probably for the final exam in law school. They're lazy and greedy, and your best interests are not served by having attorneys. So I decided at that point there I would teach individuals to be their own attorneys. You have a right to represent yourself, and if done properly, with intelligence and effort, you do a better job than the attorneys will.
That's okay. Can you tell me about being, just brief, in like one statement? I was a Marine Corps officer and I served in Vietnam.
Okay, that. I spent 12 years in the Marine Corps as an aviator. 2 tours in Vietnam. I've seen the results of the world bankers and their plans. Wars are fought and financed by the bankers on both sides. The only ones who win are the bankers. As far as the ones who lose, it's always both countries, because of the dead and wounded, and the ill feelings that last for generations.
How do you feel about being an American?
I'm proud to be an American. I love this country. I fought for it. I'm willing to die for it. The reason I do what I do now is for this country. Patriotism is a word that's misused a lot by a lot of people. But I feel I am truly a patriot, because I'm giving and sacrificing the good American dream to live rather humbly compared to what I could afford to be able to teach people what their rights are and how to enforce those rights. I have a calling, and I think every one of us, God has given us a path to lead. I'm just following that path.
Who owns the IRS?
IRS is, I'm not sure IRS is owned by anyone. There's evidence that it was incorporated in Delaware in 1933. And that in itself, many people have said, well, that's probably not the same IRS. In 1934, they didn't pay their taxes, so they lost their incorporation in Delaware. The only interesting thing I found in that they were incorporated is that Prescott Bush was one of the incorporators. That's significant. I think that they're an agency of the Treasury because they had an agency agreement, but the fact is they're not part of the federal government.
Who is the Secretary of the Treasury? What is his function?
Well, the Secretary of the Treasury is the trustee for the bankruptcy. Our country went in bankruptcy in 1933, and we've had several reorganization plans, and he is in fact the trustee for the bankruptcy. He's the one that transfers the wealth from our country to the IMF.
Tell me more about that.
Well, he's in fact he's paid by them, not even paid by our Treasury. And the terms of their agreement with our country is they would give us all the credit that we wanted to print this fiat money. In return, they would not be audited. They would not pay taxes on any of their proceeds. And it's probably a $12 trillion a year business, and they can't be audited. Can you imagine having a business that was not audited by the government and you can do whatever you want to do, and not be monitored? Not by law, you can't monitor them. It's total control of our finances in this country. They have total control.
Most people think that the Federal Reserve serves we the people.
I think in some respects it does. It gives unlimited credit. After the Second World War, there was, and the Depression, the Great Depression, they had to have a war to come out of the Depression. Ours is a war economy. It always has been. But every 20 years or so, we must have a war to fuel our economy. The credit was, after the Depression, there was no credit. People just didn't have any money. There was no money around. So the expansion of credit was necessary so people could finance homes, buy cars, get education for their children. So this debt credit system that the Federal Reserve uses, the fractional reserve banking, was established. And we got rid of the requirement that they would be backed by currency, by actual money. In 33, they confiscated all of our gold and silver, which is the only constitutional currency that we have. The Constitution has not been changed or repealed. That's still the only constitutional currency. Right now, we're using private money, which is the Federal Reserve. They're a private corporation. In 1913, they were incorporated in Delaware. In fact, they are a private corporation.
How come it says United States of America on the Federal Reserve notes then?
Well, you say whatever you want to. The United States of America, in fact, this money that they're using right now is used in this country. Not just in this country, but in Liberia. It's used in many South American countries as a currency of that country also. The United States of America it's the home of that currency where the credit is established. And again, the credit being the houses, the cars, the labor of every individual in this country for unlimited credit with the Federal Reserve. That's right now. There's exemption for the if you retire, 59 and a half. There's an exemption. If you retire before that, there's a 10% penalty for early retirement. Even though you pay taxes on that money you've gotten, they'll charge you 10% penalty for early retirement, which is calculated upon your living and working for 59 and a half years. So you pay back this alleged debt to the Federal Reserve.
What is the national debt?
Well, I think the national debt itself is the total amount of money that's been generated to the credit system. And the national debt's kind of elusive. They say on the books it's probably $8 trillion. It's probably more like 17 trillion if you take all the things that are off budget. And if you count all the personal debt on top of it, it's over $70 trillion. Every blade of grass in this country, every brick, every car, everything in this country is only worth $77 trillion estimated. So we're right now very close to reaching the maximum absorption where there'd be no credit available because we've reached the value of the country. You buy the country for $77 trillion, and that's effectively what they've done through credits.
Who owns it?
The 12 banking families. My book, High Priest of Treason, I've identified all 12 families.
Tell me about the citizenship sovereignty issue.
That's a complicated subject. We won't be able to in great detail. But the 14th Amendment, they felt was necessary to give the blacks their total freedom. And so the language of the 14th Amendment gave them some freedoms. But if we sign up for it ourselves, we in fact becomes property of Washington, D.C., U.S. citizens. There's a big difference between the United States of America, United States being lowercase, America being capital. One's an adjective that describes a place. United States of America, all caps, is an entity that's completely foreign, separate. Black's dictionary, law dictionary, 6th edition, or even the 4th.
When you start again, start off with Black's Law Dictionary.
Okay. Black's Law Dictionary, 4th, 5th, or 6th editions, if you look up the United States of America, it will explain it very clearly. As also the case of Hooven v. Evans, where they said very clearly there are 3 distinct United States. And it depends on the context you're talking about at the time, what it is. In law, every word is important. They don't just throw words in and have words. So President Clinton, when he says, well, is depending on what is means, he's exactly right, because you cannot take face value for the word. You must analyze each word in its proper context. And the United States of America, when used in its proper context, is the 50 states which are united by a bond of the Constitution. It means all the states. But every state itself is a sovereign nation under that union, except we all work together for the common good of all. Much like Europe's trying to do now with the European Economic Union. I don't know if they'll have the success we've had, because their constitution certainly is not like ours.
Can you say something like, you're not a U.S. citizen, they want you to think that you are, or something like that?
Well, the language of the 14th Amendment incorporates and makes the people, the black people, it makes them free. In the context of they have the same rights that we have in our states. But they always become the property and ownership of the federal government in Washington, D.C., which is the United States. And the United States is not the same as the United States of America. But when you buy into the 14th Amendment, that you also get the rights that they have, really they have no rights whatsoever, because our rights are already secured by the 1st, 4th, and 5th Amendments, and 6th and 7th, whereas theirs is not. They have no rights. Look at cases like McKinney versus United States, or Balzic versus Puerto Rico, where it very clearly says that they have no rights. People who are U.S. citizens, subjects of Washington, D.C., or the territories, have no rights whatsoever. They merely have privileges, where we have inalienable rights given by God, which are secured by our first 10 amendments to the Constitution. They don't have the same rights, but the courts look upon us and have a legal presumption that we are in fact U.S. citizens also. The only way to overcome a legal presumption is with evidence. The only possible evidence that's available to us is in fact expatriation. So if you expatriate, which is prescribed by Congress in statute, you follow that procedure, you can expatriate from the United States. You're still a citizen of the United States of America, but you're not under federal control whatsoever. It's possible you could break a federal law if you're in federal territory. Even if you're states, you can break a federal law if you're involved in interstate transportation of merchandise that's illegal or whatever. But they have very little power in the states themselves. The states themselves are paramount as far as power. And the federal government is subservient to them. Well, they've inverted it over the years, where now the federal government is trying to be a central government where everybody reports to it. It's the all-powerful thing. Well, in fact, it's the least powerful thing. The first power is we the people. We give the power to all governments. And secondly is the state. And third and least of all the states as far as power, as our founding fathers would want us to do, is the federal government. They're supposed to be the least powerful, not the all-powerful. They certainly inverted the relationship.
Tell me about the 1040 form.
Well, 1040 form, I chuckle. There's probably 3,000 people a year who go to jail and prosecuted for willful failure to file. Now, if you're liable for a tax, you certainly have to pay that tax. But you have to find out what's liable. Why are you liable for it? Now, the forms I see, the 1040 form, I'm a stickler for details. And I check the forms out, everything I sign, I check it out in great detail. If there's a number there, I look at it. There's an OMB number, which stands for Office of Management and Budget, in the top right-hand corner. That number, if you check it out with the Office of Management and Budget, is for the Virgin Islands and certain U.S. territories and U.S. citizens working abroad. Now, that's not me. So since it's not me, I can't use that form. To use that form, knowing it's not one I should be using as a citizen of the state of Florida, if I were to use that, at that point there, it's fraud to use that form. Therefore, fraud is a felony. I'm not going to commit a felony to fill out a form. The second thing is that it says on the bottom of it, under penalty of perjury. I can't sign that because I'm not under oath. That's the only way you can be under penalty of perjury, is to be under oath. I'm not under oath. Now, the Sullivan case, back in the early 40s, Sullivan was a crook, and he was arrested, charged, and he said, well, for not filing, he said, well, if I report this income, and this was a Supreme Court case, and he says, if I report the income since I'm a criminal, then I've lost my Fifth Amendment rights of self-incrimination, because at the bottom I take an oath before a notary, so I'd be perjuring myself, and I'm guilty of perjury then, so I can't fill it out. The Supreme Court agreed with him. Well, the moment that happened, that should have ended all taxes, because people could have objected on the Fifth Amendment rights. The court immediately agreed with him, said that we agree with you, and Congress immediately took the form and took the notary requirement off of it and resubmitted the form. It still had at the bottom under penalty of perjury, but there was no notary. So people assumed that there still were. And so, like our ignorance, most people are just ignorant in the law, and they don't follow it. Most attorneys don't even think about that. They go ahead and willy-nilly sign their name to anything. When in fact you're saying that you're under oath. That's a technical perjury. That's also a felony. So to comply with the 1040 reporting, you're guilty of 2 felonies. So 6011 of the code says if you're liable for a tax, and if you're liable, you should pay it. You can do so by statement, list, or form. That's what it says. Since the form that they have is not the one for us, and if you ask them repeatedly for the one that's for you as a citizen of your state, they won't reply to you. Since that's the case, then you still have an out by filing the statements. So I prepare statements every year, and I send it to them. Now, I'm not a tax protester. I'm not a tax avoider. I want to pay every tax. In fact, my federal government does things for me. We get benefits from the federal government. I don't want a free ride. If they're going to defend me from foreign invasion, certainly I want that protection, because I can't do it myself. They should be paid for that. And they have to be paid. They couldn't function without it. So I have an obligation to make sure that government is reimbursed for what they give me. And again, I don't want a free ride. Many in the patriot community do want a free ride, and that's just wrong. But every year, I give them a donation for services rendered to the Treasury of the United States, not Secretary of Treasury. I want my money to go directly to the Treasury for those donations for the services rendered.
So I want to clarify that this is not an interview like a normal interview.
I understand that.
So I won't be able to use the details. We're just looking for the sound bites that are going to intrigue people.
Sure.
So why is it set up so that people fill out a 1040?
We're conditioned that way. The first income tax was 1939, called the Public Salary Tax Act. And it was public salary. If you work for the government, state or federal, you were required to pay taxes. It's a kickback, 10% kickback. Well, during the Second World War, they required all their employees to, and it was called the Victory Tax Act. It was just a remake of the 1939 Public Salary Tax Act. But it was a voluntary system for us. But for public employees, it was a mandatory system. Well, once you volunteer, they liked the money so much, there was so much coming in, more than they ever expected, and we all jumped in to help pay for the war. We wouldn't support our boys overseas. We all joined up. We started paying the taxes. First time in 1941. And since it was a temporary measure for 2 years, they liked the money, so they said, let's continue it for another 2 years. And then again, done that for another 3 years. And they just said, well, heck, we'll just keep it forever. And that's what they've done. It's a voluntary system. They say in their own brochures, it's a voluntary compliance system. When I first found that out, I called up my friendly tax person in Atlanta and says, is this voluntary? Yes, it is, sir. I said, well, great. I don't want to volunteer any longer. They said, oh, well, you have to. I said, well, if I have to, it's not voluntary, it's mandatory. So what are you calling it voluntary for? They'll let you volunteer in, It's just impossible or it's very difficult to volunteer out. It's possible if you know how to do it, but you be very careful. And law is not like horseshoes and hand grenades. Almost doesn't count. You better be exactly right.
Very good. How are people collateralized?
I'm not quite sure. I know that they put I can't prove this. But there's a tax exclusion for instance, $890,000 if you were to die. I think that's the amount that they've put as far as our value. If you take an average salary and you extrapolate it for 59 and a half years, and this is how much money a person would have to contribute, that's probably what it would come up to. Right now, there's many people in the redemption program who think that by grabbing their capital name designation letters that they can reverse that process. I think there's some legal currency there, but I think they carried it too far. I think there's some things you can do, and recapture that fictitious name that they had, the capital name letter, instead of upper and lower case. You can recapture that. I think beyond that, though, it's dangerous to try and tread. You just don't answer to it. It's not you. So I think it's they've monetized that capital name by birth certificate. When you're born, your certificate of natural birth is not the same as birth certificate. The hospital creates a certificate of natural birth. It's upper and lowercase letters. They turn it over to the county. At that point there, they change it into a capital name. They create this fiction. It's called juristic personality. And they own the fiction they created. It's not you. It just sounds like you. And so none of us ever thought about that. But you cannot spell a proper noun in anything other than upper and lowercase letters. It's against English grammar. And if you use grammar improperly, that's a fraudulent use of the language. So by creating this legal fiction, this capital name designation, and you answer to it, then you become it, subject to all its provisions. And since it's the one who's been charged $890,000, you're the one who pays it off, even though it's not your debt. You think it's you. We work our whole life trying to pay a debt of a legal fiction.
Who's liable for the national debt?
Well, we are. Our country's liable. The government's liable for it. And we, the people, if it's taxed properly, are also liable for it. The Congress has the power to tax us constitutionally. Income tax itself is not unconstitutional. It depends on who's being paid and what they're charging taxes for. But they have every provision for excise taxes. Excise taxes are constitutional. If you buy something and use it, you should pay for it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's totally constitutional. Right now they're talking about remodeling the tax code to make it more user-friendly by getting away with the income tax and have a national sales tax. I think it's H.R. 25. And a lot of people think that's going to pass before Bush is out of office. It'll be a 12.5% national sales tax on everything you buy. And if you buy something new, 12.5%, you pay for it. If you don't want to pay it, don't buy it. You can avoid that tax. Or buy something used where you don't pay the tax. But you're going to have the tax. They have to have the money to support some of the government. But again, the money itself is irrelevant because there's no money behind it. It's just credit. And they have unlimited credit with the Federal Reserve. If they want money, they go start the presses up. I never knew what the difference between the Federal Reserve and the counterfeiters from Iran. They both supply us counterfeit money. Neither of them is backed by gold or silver. But one's illegal and one's not. I never understood the difference, except that the Federal Reserve, when they charge you, they cost them 2.5 to 3 cents per bill, no matter what the value of the bill is, to print it. And they charge us 100% face value of it, and along with 10% for the privilege of printing our money for us. And then they sell it to banks at another 6% or so. So we're paying about 116% on something that cost them 3 cents. And it's just absolute sham. There's nothing behind it whatsoever. So if a counterfeiter gives you this money, it doesn't charge you anything. He just gives it to you. I think that's great. Give me all the counterfeit money you can give me. I think it's great. It's just as valid as theirs. There's nothing behind either one of them.
Tell me about usury.
Usury is against the biblical principles. In fact, right now, Muslims are not allowed to charge usury. It's a death offense. It wasn't in the Bible for many, many years. In this country, it was punishable by death in the early stages of our country's development. It's an evil system to loan a person money for an interest. A person who gives you money should have a profit. The Bible's not against profits. It's against interest. And the interest itself is against biblical principles. And I try to follow the Bible as much as I possibly can. And I'm not going to violate something. So I don't use interest. I have credit cards, but I don't pay interest on them. I just pay them off every month. But you have to use them in this country. There's no way to get around without them. But I don't believe in investing, because if you invest, you're going to pay interest. And you're going to receive interest. And I don't want to be involved in that system. It's a diabolically evil system. And most families, if you look around, are up to their eyeballs in debt because of it. It's a destroyer. The money has never been printed to pay off the interest for our federal debt. So that being the case, it just gets larger and larger. It's an inverted pyramid, and it's going to collapse on us very soon. As soon as the petrodollars come back, repatriated from the Saudi Arabia and those other oil-producing countries, now they're taking Eurodollars for petroleum purchases, not the U.S. dollar. No longer taking that. So they're going to repatriate all those U.S. dollars back here in this country. When it comes, we'll have a hyperinflation. That's when the pyramid collapses on all of us.
Can you believe I got a cell phone signal up here?
Nope, I didn't believe it.
Why does the IRS need to trick people with that, making them Virgin Islands residents?
Again, I don't know. We'd have to ask the IRS. I've asked them. They never respond to you. When you ask them a question they can't answer, they don't respond. A lot of letters I've sent them, 50 or 60 letters over my period of my 25 years of working with them, and they don't answer many of them because they can't. I asked them to show me, identify the proper form. I want to pay this thing, but I need the proper form because this doesn't apply to me. And I have letters from the Office of Management Budget that show it does not apply to me. I'm not a Virgin Island resident. And so therefore, since I'm not, and all I have is my labor, which is not taxable, I'd like to know what kind of tax I'm liable for, number one, and what form I use to report it. If it's something I'm responsible for by statute, I'll pay it. I've never tried to avoid taxes. The people who do are criminals.
How is this usury system tied into war?
Again, I think war is a combination of idiots on both sides. It's the last alternative, and it's totally imbecilic. Not to the bankers, though, because the bankers finance both sides in any conflict we've ever had. It's always been the bankers who finance both sides. So rather, it makes no difference who wins or loses. They win. Vietnam was fought for oil and rubber. That's all. Lazard for his rubber, which is the owner of the Federal Reserve and the international banker, and Rockefeller for the Standard Oil. They were vested interest there, and that's why we fought that war. Not for the freedom of the Vietnamese people. We could care less about freedom. All we do is talk about it. The guys out there doing the fighting and the killing, though, they do believe in it, but we've been conditioned to do so. International bankers have no loyalty to any country. They have the almighty buck as their god.
How come there's so, I guess, compared to Sam's coming at you?
Yeah, a lot less dangerous.
Yeah. We're almost done here. No. How come none of this is in our education?
Well, obviously, if they told you that the War Powers Act, for instance, took away our constitutional rights in 1933, I don't think we'd like that much. Our fathers would not have liked it. Our grandfathers would not have liked it. I don't like it. And when I first found out about it, I was incensed. But they've been using it for the 12 different presidents. Have never gotten repealed the War Powers Act. Everything they do is connected to it because it gives he's a constitutional dictator. He does not need Congress, does not need approval of Congress or the Senate for anything he does under War Powers Act. He's a constitutional dictator, much like the Roman Caesars were. Again, I think this is a master plan. Our country is not the free country I thought it was. The fact is, unless you were born before 1933, you've never been free. I've never been free. I thought I was, and now I find out I'm not because of war powers. We're totally under the control of the federal government, the President of the United States, and the international bankers who control him.
Run out of questions, so I'm just thinking here for a second. I got everything I need. Thank you. how come people why are people willing to still believe in the myth?
I don't know. It's ignorance. We've not been taught this stuff. In law school, I was lied to, like every lawyer's lied to. We're not taught the truths. The truths are found by independent investigation and research. You don't find the truths in law school. I don't recall any truth I've ever had, except that maybe it's science and mathematics in school. Everything else is fiction and lies and subterfuge. And the federal government's famous for giving